Hey guys, welcome back to the Fulco. Today we're going to be talking about last night's match, Galatasaray against Tottenham Hotspur. Plenty to get through, lots of things to discuss. Obviously wasn't the best night out playing Galatasaray, but it is, on reflection this morning, it's not as doom and gloom as I felt during certain moments of the game last night. We can kick off with the team selection, and I've seen people discussing this, and in my chats and friends groups, people have been looking at it in various different ways. Whether we should have gone for a strong lineup against Galatasaray, whether we should have completely changed the team and played the under-16s. I think, given the injury situation that we face. And the fact that we are trying to spread minutes about, and we are trying to get even numbers of minutes into certain players. We're trying to play players into a bit of rhythm. I've got no issue with the team selection. Seeing Archie Gray, I think before the game, was actually down on most of the team sheets as playing at centre half. But he had moved over to his left fullback position that he's occupied a couple of times already. I've got no real issue with making changes and making rotations, particularly as there were a lot of what you would consider slightly more senior, or certainly more senior first teamers kind of smattered throughout the team. When you do that kind of thing, you might get a disjointed performance. The younger players, or those that don't play as much, will lack rhythm. They might lack sharpness. And it can be quite disjointed. So that was to be expected, and I think you could go into that being quite forgiving of those kind of things. But the issues that we had in that game kind of far exceeded that, and that's what we'll come on to talk about, is particularly those what you would consider first team players, how they performed on the night, and therefore what the team did as a whole. Given the fact that we absolutely did take a pasting performance-wise and chances-wise, I'm going to try to start with the positives or the neutrals, as opposed to just hammering straight in on the negative stuff. So Will Lancashire gets himself a goal. That's great for him. He did all the right things in terms of that move. It was a really nicely worked goal where we finally progressed the ball forward after seemingly not being able to do so at all during the first half. A really nicely weighted ball from Archie Gray, and again he found himself in a midfield position doing midfielder things. He's got good distribution, you can see that, so that bodes well for him in the future in terms of moving into that number 6 role, or into that midfield role that he's going to occupy. Floated a lovely ball over. Gala left so much space for us to exploit, if only we'd had the quality to exploit it. And it was the major frustration for about 60-65 minutes, is our inability to do that with players in positions that should have been able to do that and should have been able to exploit it. But anyway, we had the freedom of midfield for Gray to deliver a nice ball. Johnson peels away, plays it across, and Lancashire, with the nice confident finish, puts it in with the outside of his boot into the roof of the net. No chance for the keeper. So he gets his first goal, and that's great for him. That's great for his confidence. Now, only time will tell, given how the game panned out for Lancashire, whether kind of as a net result that was a positive match for him or not. Certainly it would have been a learning experience. I think he did okay. You can see that, physically, and I think I've said this before, Lancashire is in kind of youth football, in academy football, he is a beast. He's a really big lad. He's developed. He's reaching that maturity. But in first team football, it's not the same. It's absolutely not the same. So he doesn't look as physically imposing as he does in the academy system. I think he struggled at times. Davinson Sanchez, arguably had his best game with anything to do with Tottenham Hotspur. Maybe that's a bit unfair on Big Dav. But he was really up for this game, and he gave Lancashire a hard time, as did his colleague, the other centre half, who was a bit of a bruiser. There were a couple of occasions where Lancashire couldn't quite hold the ball up, couldn't quite bring players into play around him, which is okay. Again, he's a young striker and he's going to learn from that. And he's playing with Dom Solanke, who is fantastic at it. So he's going to learn lots from that. So no issues whatsoever. And he gets a goal. So let's take that as a positive. The only real genuinely without caveat positive was Lolo. Bentancur was excellent when he came on. He made a huge difference. He completely solidified within a certain context, given how the rest of the team continued to perform. He completely solidified. He took possession of the football. He played that number 6 role really well. He got around the park. He was able to receive in tight spaces and not concede possession. So that's great. He only had one kind of like spin move that he got the ball taken off him, but then he got back in and got into a good position and it didn't lead to anything. So he was excellent. And, you know, he is really now starting to motor and starting to get back to that player that he was before his injury. And I really do go back to what he showed under Conte. He really did show the elements of an all-action number 8 or even a number 6 in terms of his quality on the ball, his defensive capabilities, his reading of the game, and his just non-stop energy and getting in there. So he was excellent. And I think that bodes well for Tottenham for the reason that we know this ban is coming. We know it's going to be a long one. And we're just super hopeful that obviously it being an FA ban, that it's not going to affect European competition, because it looks like he's going to be the Thursday night man. And with him playing and being guaranteed to play 90 on Europa League nights, I think that might be coming at a good time for us. We've got lots of injuries, but it's coming at a time where we need different players to play in different competitions to spread out the minutes. And if he's only able to play Europa League and he's our best performing number 6 at the minute, we've got some tough games. We've got Rangers away. We've got Roma coming up, even though I think the name Roma has got Spurs fans a little bit more fearful than if you actually look at what Roma are doing this season. They don't look like they're a very good side. Don't get me wrong, Dr. Tottenham is absolutely here for you. If you're not doing well, we are here to ail you. But yeah, Lolo being available for Europa League on Thursday nights with some big games coming up and him now really performing at a high level, I think is super important. And then the team you put around him, the better the team you put around him, the more likely we are to get results on that Thursday night. So that's a positive. We move into neutral territory now. We're in Fraser Forster land, and I know Forster comes in for a huge amount of criticism, and you know fans would love to have a better backup goalkeeper. You know, there's talk about why we've handed out such long contracts to our reserve goalkeepers if Fraser Forster is going to be your number 2, and that's his level of performance. I totally get it. He dropped one. Megged himself, which is phenomenal skills, and it led to an almighty goalmouth scramble. It looked very silly, but arguably, if you look at how many chances they had, how many good saves he made, I think he did okay as a shot stopper, so as a goalkeeper. And actually, in the split second that ball was floated across and Forster came up to grab it, I was delighted, because I thought that's exactly what you want. He's up and he just comes and plucks it and he snuffs out that attack. Obviously, he then drops it behind him and makes a huge mess of it. But if he hadn't, that was exactly what I wanted to see in that moment from a goalkeeper. It's the kind of thing that Vicario hasn't necessarily shown he's capable of. And so, you know, it's that margin of he probably took his eye, or he's already thinking about rolling the ball out. And it slips through his grasp. So yeah, that was a shame. Shot stopping, he did really well. I've seen some debate about whether he should have claimed whether he should have got a hand to that first goal, which was an absolute thunderbolt. Yes, I'd argue you could say that. You could say he could have taken one step to his left. I will leave it to the goalkeeping coaches on this one. He could have taken a step to his left. I believe he actually gets glove to it, or it really does fly in just above his hand, which, you know, is partly to do with that massive frame and how big he is and how much of the goal he covers. But yes, you could argue that he could take a step to his left, but at a certain point, a strike like that is going to test any goalkeeper. And I would argue there are a lot of goalkeepers who might still get some glove and it still ends up in the back of the net. So yes, maybe you can be critical of that, but yeah, I'll leave that to the goalkeeping coaches who know far more on that side of things than I do. I never liked coaching goalkeepers. It wasn't my thing until you talk about coaching goalkeepers to play out from the back. And Forster, again, he did okay. He looks more composed than you would expect from a goalkeeper who's not really had that in his career. He had only one pass, which I thought, yeah, it was the wrong pass selection. It was played in to the wrong player at the wrong time in the wrong situation, and it led to a turnover. But other than that, his distribution was okay. He seems quite calm, and you know, for a goalkeeper that wasn't designed to play that kind of football, I think he did okay on that element as well. So I'm going neutral on Forster for that game. Unfortunately, all people are really going to think about is that spill. Archie Gray, if we look at Archie Gray, he again is in the neutral category. He struggles as a fullback against wingers. It is clearly not his natural game as a midfielder. You know, that kind of 360 in the middle of the park, that's his game, and it's not 1v1 being stood up and having, you know, tricky and speedy wingers cutting back inside on you, and he's playing on the left as a right footer. So there's lots of reasons why he struggles, but he didn't struggle to the point that you felt that this was a huge weak spot. I think we were weak all over the place, and just in terms of the way we played, we invited Gala into attacking positions all the time. So we certainly didn't make it easy for any of our defenders by the lack of quality in our own play, allowing Gala to keep coming and keep getting to those attacking positions. They had time, they had space, they had players running into channels, they had a lofted ball over the top at any given point to either Icardi or to Osimhen. So yeah, it was difficult, but again, Archie Gray, he does okay, and he's getting lots and lots of minutes. He's seeing lots and lots of things, which is going to stand him in good stead for his learning when he moves eventually back to that number 6, to that midfield position. And as I said, lovely floated ball for Brennan Johnson, showing his kind of midfielder's distribution and quality. So he did okay. Davies did okay. Neutral. Ben Davies, steady Ben. 6 out of 10 Ben. He did all the things you'd want from him. He was quite good. Again, given the time and the space and the gaps that we allowed to that Gala team, I would have thought he would be much more exposed, but no, he used his experience. You could see him trying to talk to the players around him. You could see him getting frustrated every time we gave the ball away. When our midfielders were conceding possession time and time again, you can see the frustration that comes from his experience. He knows what this is leading to. And you know, there were no major issues with Ben. So yeah, well done for him for not losing his head when everybody around him seemingly did. Porro, I thought was really poor last night. He had, as I often say, he doesn't have defensive instincts. He's not a defensive fullback. He doesn't do that side of the game very well. I think the first goal is a real example of that. He's got to get him. It's not the first goal, sorry, the second goal. He's got to get himself really tucked in and into the striker's lower back. There's literally no one else along. It's just a lofted ball. It's come over Dragusin. And you've got to, in that situation as a fullback, with no one else to mark and no one else to think about, you have got to be engaging in contact and really getting in the striker's lower back. Even if you're not getting up and challenging for the ball, you are getting in their lower back as they rise and making it as difficult, making them arch their body. So it's a really difficult chance for them. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that instinct. And you know, for both the second and the third goal, Porro, you know, absolutely nowhere to be seen or not involved at all. And then even worse than that, the stuff that he is brilliant at normally, he didn't do. His distribution was awful all night long. He conceded possession time and again. rarely got a pass to feet. He was playing really risky balls across multiple lines and vertical channels. It was just making it so easy to a Gala team that were on the front foot to step onto things and win the ball, or just kind of fudging balls out of play on the right hand side. It was a really disappointing performance from him. And then we come to Radu. And Radu had a really bad evening, and it's really hard to put my finger on where things are with Radu, because he evidently, he's a really good defender. He's got a lot going for him. He's a very physical, very aggressive defender, but technically he's got a long way to go. He doesn't look comfortable with the ball. He makes bad decisions in an almost carbon copy of Karabag and his red card. He's got, not enough awareness, or he's too casual, letting the ball run across him. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a great phase of play that led to him having the ball, but he was not under any great threat if he takes a touch. But he doesn't. He lets it go across his body. He's got a player on his inside. He's got a player on behind him. He's not aware of any of it, and he gives the ball away, and that leads to the goal. And it's just really weak. It's really weak play. It's poor. It's lack of awareness of your surroundings, lack of technique. Didn't take the ball on in that situation and do something positive with it. His kind of last line defending, throwing his body in the way, poking things out the way, the bits and pieces, some heading, was okay. He did those bits of the game that he's very good at. He did those okay, but he really struggled, and he kept getting caught out from lofted balls. Not these balls were not whipped in for Osimhen to attack. These balls were lofted in, and his body position, he was getting his feet caught under him. He's facing the ball, and then it takes far too long to do a 360 and turn and figure out, and Osimhen's behind you, and he's absolutely phenomenal, with the high ball. I don't think he handled the situation very well. We again didn't help ourselves by continuously conceding possession and allowing Gala to have lots of time to cross and to play balls in. But I thought Dragushin had a really poor game, and the paradox, or the question for me, is that he seems to do really well in the Prem. And he plays really well in the Prem, and I don't know whether that's the type of game, the type of opposition, or the players that he finds himself paired with. I don't think you can blame Ben Davies for any of Dragushin's issues last night, or whether it's something else. But he really didn't look comfortable last night. He had a very poor game. So we're now moving into, unfortunately, the negatives, and it kind of starts there, and it moves forward basically through our midline. Maddison and Bissouma were very poor, and this is one of the key takeaways from me. When you've got these properly senior first team players, they're first teamers, they're not young as well, these are senior players, they're experienced players. When they play in a much changed team, you can understand the team being disjointed, you can understand the performance not having rhythm or tempo, but what you would expect to see is quality from those players. So in their isolation, in their own actions and the things that they're doing, you're expecting to see them do them with a level of quality that separates from the younger players, or those that haven't played a great deal, or those that you consider to be inferior to those players. Whereas that is absolutely not what we saw, and Biss and Madders were absolutely guilty of giving the ball time and again. They just handed it back to Gala. Nothing came off for Maddison. Little Cruyff turns and tricks and flicks. He got out once. He literally got out once, and then that didn't lead anywhere. We couldn't hold the ball out up front. But he gave the ball away again and again and again. Delivery, passing, again, kind of similar to the Crystal Palace game. Just when the opposition was really front foot and nicking and poking and trying to, just do all the niggly little bits, he seemingly had no answer. He couldn't drop into positions. He then became completely anonymous when we moved him to the left-hand side. And yeah, it just led to every time one of those two got the ball was coming straight back at us. And that in Gala's stadium is absolutely not what you want. There is no, that crowd is going to be brilliant no matter what the game state is. But what you've got to try and do is you've got to try and turn the crowd against their own team by outplaying their own team and by snuffing out their threat and just giving them a ball. It made it attack versus defense. So really disappointed in Madders and Biss. Now, some people might argue, oh no, Biss was actually quite good. Like, he got on the ball a lot, and that was later in the game. That was when we improved. That was when we made changes. When Bentancur was on the pitch, he did improve, but the bits that he was failing at early in the game, he continued to do. So a few loose touches and then trying to drive forward with the ball. I appreciate what he's trying to do. He's trying to drive his team forward, but he would overrun it. He'd take a heavy touch at one point and he'd run straight into the next line of Galatasaray defenders, and the ball would come straight back, and he did that consistently. So yeah, I was disappointed in those two. That's not the level you need. They took their level from the overall performance instead of maintaining their level and their standard, and then, you know, the rest of the team performing how they're going to perform. And when your senior players perform like that, you've probably got very little chance. You've got no chance with a young team, with a much changed team. You've got no chance of going in and getting results. So that was really disappointing. Berryval as well, he has really struggled. And not just in this game. This game was always going to be tough for him. You know, it was going to be a baptism of fire in hell. But he has struggled in previous games in the Europa League. And, you know, he was obviously a bit unlucky with the Karabag game, with Dragushin getting sent off, and he didn't get the minutes in that game. But in the games that he has had, he's really struggled. He is still taking too long on the ball. He wants to do all the things that make those highlight reels of him look incredible, but what he needs to learn as a young player is, if that's not coming off, you very quickly need to change that to really back to basics, because all of the stuff that he's really good at just means that his very basic touch and control and manipulation of the football is very good. So you've got to roll it all back. I don't want to see you putting your studs on the ball, trying to take the physical contact and then roll it back past the player. If you've already seen, you've tried that once, you've tried it maybe twice, it hasn't worked, you've conceded possession, you've put us in a really difficult position. You've got to now learn from that and be in a situation where, okay, I really need to simplify. Ball comes into me with quality, I'm just going to bounce it off. 1 and 2 touch, start moving it quickly, start finding my feet in the game, start having an impact on the game in my position. He didn't do that. He continued to try harder, and then the trying harder led to making more mistakes. He was overrunning the ball, he was letting the ball run past him and just having it taken off him, and physically he was being played off the ball. So he had a really tough game. These are all learning experiences for him. I think Postecoglou said it in post-match. If he wants to be the player that he's got the capability of being for the technique that he has, he will have to learn very quickly from this. And also his pressing. I felt like he lacks physicality in his pressing in midfield, and I think that will come. I think he'll get fitter, and I think he'll get stronger in that. He's got to add more running power if he's going to play a number 8 role in the Ange system. So a really tough night for him, but there's a super talented player in there. So you just hope that these kind of things really burnish players like that, and they come back really desperate to improve in these areas and step their game forward. I think that if we don't really want to talk about Son, he was largely anonymous. He had one kind of good move, a little nutmeg and a good move on the left hand side, but he was largely anonymous and didn't have a great deal to do. Brennan similarly got himself an assist. He was okay, but he found himself chasing shadows because we literally never held on to possession. And then we change the team up. We bring on Lolo, we bring on Deki, we bring on Sarr, and we improve. Then we get to the moment where Lancashire probably thinks he should have got a foul, but again, it's that physicality thing. He's kind of out-muscled. It's kind of a foul, maybe not a foul. Gets himself out-muscled, gives the ball away. He's so desperate to make amends. He lunges in. And if you watch that lunge, he knows he's gone for the full clear out, smash that ball into touch and take the defender with him. He is on the wrong side. He has no view of the ball when he makes it. He just closes his eyes and he goes in for a full Romero, and he gets it all wrong. And the player sees it coming. It's a really, really easy one for the player to just put a leg out, take the contact, and it was really silly because he got a probably quite unfortunate yellow card for supposedly an elbow just a minute or so earlier. So yeah, again, a learning opportunity, and you just really hope that he takes the positives of getting his goal and playing in that atmosphere and being involved in the first team, and the disappointment of that red card just, you know, reinforces how you need to compose yourself in a game that's not going your way in the future, and learn from it and take that with you, and you'll have that in your mind when you're on a yellow card in future. We were much improved. We got the second goal. Porro actually gets an assist. Is probably the only good thing he did in the game. But he had acres of space. Once again, Gala, so much time and space. If we'd have actually used it and secured possession, it was so disappointing. But Porro finds himself in an advanced right position. He smashes the ball across. And Dom Solanke now on the pitch with a really nice kind of Cruyff style through the leg finish. Good, high quality from first teamers. And then, you know, before the end of the game, we had a couple of really good situations. We had a really poor ball through from Sarr, I think it was, to that could have set, was it Solanke or Decky? I think Solanke could have set him away. 1v1 with the keeper, gets the pass wrong. Decky finds himself in a situation where the ball falls to him with the goalkeeper miles out of play, and with his quality, actually, I was expecting him to hit the target. I was kind of up and ready to celebrate, and, you know, a very unlikely point. We certainly could have got something out of the game. We certainly didn't deserve anything out of the game, considering they had 450 shots, of which I think Forster saved about 440. But yeah, it was just, once again, we talk about what's important, the result of the performance in this game, with lots of changes, with lots of injuries. The performance is what's important, and the performance wasn't there. And for me, the biggest disappointment is that the first teamers who were on, who did start, who were part of that performance, didn't impose themselves. They didn't do what they needed to do to secure possession, to play, to really get into areas to affect and to hurt Gala. They just conceded possession time and time again. We were wide open, and it just looked like no one really wanted to take control of the situation and step up, which again is a leadership thing, which we talk about a lot. That's the biggest disappointment for me, and yet we still could have come away with a point if we'd been slightly more fortunate. So that is something we're going to have to take. That's something that group of players is going to have to learn from. And it also shows us that we are, when we've got a few injuries, we are still probably a fair way off in terms of squad depth to really challenge for the higher honours. So when we're talking about Premier League challenges and, you know, being in the Champions League and competing against the teams in the Champions League, and being a multiple threat in cup competitions, I think squad-wise we're still a bit lacking, and the squad that we have is quite young. So there's still a lot of runway for those players to really improve, but we're going to need to bolster our squad if we want to be competitive. So last night kind of really brought that home. But the young players will take it as a learning opportunity, and I think there's some real question marks to be asked of some of the senior players that were out there, because I didn't like what I saw. Anyway, as ever, with a game that we've been totally dominated and we've come away with a defeat, it comes across a little bit negatively. Try to put some positives in there. Try to look at some of the things that we can work on. And the key being is, I think we've come out of that game with a few players like Sonny not having played a lot of minutes, Bentancur not having to play a lot, Sarr being available. I think we're going to go into the Ipswich game with about the strongest team we can, given our injuries, and therefore have the best possible chance of going into the international break with a positive result. So we've got to go and get that done on Sunday. It's not going to be an easy game. I've got a huge amount of respect for Kieran McKenna for more reasons than just what he's doing at Ipswich, and I might talk about that in the next video. But I think we have got enough at home to get this result and to get the job done. So let's not do a Dr. Tottenham. Let's get out there and put on a performance, and let's get 3 points on Sunday and go into the international break in a strong position in the Prem. Long video, guys. Thanks for sticking with it if you did, and I will see you after the Ipswich game. Come on, Tottenham.